Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the public conservation estate is one of the great treasures of this country, and when New Zealanders look to their government to determine what they seek from that government, protection of those unique species and ecosystems that exist in New Zealand and typically nowhere else in the world is one of the very core things that they expect. Mr Speaker, contrary to the remarks that recently made by the Minister of Conservation, Maggie Barry, the Greens do not attack DOC and DOC staff. The Greens believe that the Department of Conservation and its staff are heroes. The work they do is fantastic. But, Mr Speaker, increasingly they have been asked to carry out their work with one hand tied behind their back by a government that is determined to erode the funding that is available to the department to spend on conservation. Mr Speaker, the analysis undertaken by the Parliamentary Library shows that in real terms, that is inflation-adjusted terms for the benefit of the Minister, in real terms, that the department was spending $50 million and more on average less each year than when the national government took office in the 2008-9 year. More than $50 million a year in real terms less. Mr Speaker, that is a very, very substantial reduction in conservation spending. And Mr Speaker, what does that translate to? I have spoken about the 46% of tracks in the conservation estate that are not up to standard, the 26% of huts that are not up to standard, the many structures that have failed their load capacity assessments, the 38 structures that were overdue for serious or critical repairs, and the Minister has been completely unable to respond to that erosion in the conservation estate. Mr Speaker, in this year's budget, and I brought along the document, sir. In this year's budget...
Point of order. Fletcher Tabutai.
I apologise sincerely for interrupting the Speaker, but my understanding of the proceedings of the House is that for a member to move down closer to the Speaker and harass him is completely out of order, and the Minister needs to show some class in these proceedings.
No, the last part's certainly unnecessary, but the first part is correct. A member shouldn't move a seating position away from where he or she is set simply to interject on the speech that's been given by another member. I've ruled on the matter. If it's a fresh point of order, I'm happy to hear it, but I'm not interested in having that matter relitigated. The member can move back to a seat if she wants to continue, but I won't accept an unreasonable amount of interjection anyway. Kevin Haig.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. What I was about to draw the House's attention to was this document. It's entitled Estimates of Appropriations for the Government of New Zealand for the year ending 30th June 2017 Environment Sector. What this document says about the appropriation for the management of natural heritage is that the final budgeted amount for 2015-16 was, let's see, $187,877,000. And for the 2016-17 year, it has reduced to $160,639. That's a drop of 14%, Mr Speaker. And Mr Speaker, one of the ways that the Department of Conservation has been forced to accommodate that reduced commitment to spending on conservation by this government is through the Partnerships Program. And Mr Speaker, look, it's great if there is additional money that comes from the commercial sector or comes from the work done by volunteer groups. That's fantastic. That adds icing onto the cake. But in an environment where the department has less money to spend, what that does instead is replace the money that the government should be spending. And Mr Speaker, thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, what that means is that when a commercial sponsorship ends, as the Kakapo one has just done, the Department of Conservation has to stop doing other conservation work to backfill that. It means that conservation work will be done on those species that attract commercial sponsorships rather than those that are most ecologically important. And it means that the department will have to accept money sometimes from companies that will have other motives. And it's very interesting that the Minister believes that an oil company was sponsoring the Cook Strait Whale Survey because of a feeling of satisfaction that it may have given the company. In fact, Mr. Speaker, what we have seen is that it's the Minister who is out of step with the Parliamentary Libraries analysis, the independent accountants analysis, and indeed the budget documents themselves. Thank you, sir.